People mad at Sophie Cunningham for calling out men's athlete wanting to participate in women's sports. Yes, we're still talking about this. This is a thing. Now, Sophie Cunningham has become the latest person to speak out against men athletes being able to compete against women in sports, which is very, very wrong. Now, with that being said, let's jump right into this thing. So ESPN released an article today, probably like an hour ago, talking about Sophie and this whole situation with men's athlete. Shout out to Clay Travis. He stated Sophie Cunningham just became...
Two separate storylines are developing at once, one centered on Sophie Cunningham and another on Caitlin Clark. Cunningham has increasingly become a lightning rod for criticism within 1BA discourse. She's faced backlash over a finger-pointing gesture, remarks about AI-related data center concerns, and now comments regarding the participation of transgender athletes in women's sports, a topic that continues to generate significant public debate.
Sophie and this whole situation with men's athlete. Shout out to Clay Travis. He stated Sophie Cunningham just became one of the first current American female pro athletes to come out against men playing in women's sports. In a profiled article by ESPN. Good for her, rock star. Many others should follow. She's the Megan Rapinoe. Now, this is the article here. This is the section where Sophie came out and spoke out against all of this stuff that has been happening. It's being reported that you say she's a MAGA Barbie. An
ESPN profile published recently examined Cunningham's stance on this issue. Commentator Clay Travis noted that Cunningham appears to be among the first currently active American female pro athletes to publicly voice opposition to allowing transgender women to compete in women's sports categories, framing her as a notable and rare voice on the subject compared to more prominent athletes who've avoided the topic.
All of this stuff that has been happening. It's being reported that you say she's a MAGA Barbie. As some corners of the internet have taken to calling her projections. She says because what she looks like and where she's from. She'll weigh in on how to protect women's sport. She says because she's in the world and feels qualified to speak on the world, I got a lot of negative feedback about me hating trans. I'm like, I never once said that. She says, I think that I am here.
Within the ESPN piece, some online commentators have nicknamed her using a politically loaded label tied to her appearance and background. Cunningham addressed criticism that she was expressing hostility toward transgender people, stating that wasn't her intention. She described her position as coming from a place of care, paired with what she considers honesty, and said her priority is protecting young female athletes from having to compete against those she categorizes as biologically male.
I think that I am here to extend love, but I also think with that love is truth, being honest, and I want to protect young girls in a locker room or young girls in a sport who shouldn't have to go against biologically men. That's what Sophie Cunningham stated. Now, I want to go on ESPN to see if I can pull up the full article, because now that I'm reading this, it's another paragraph.
The same article touched on her broader political identity, with Cunningham describing herself as someone who holds a mix of views from different sides of the political spectrum rather than fitting neatly into one camp. She noted that people frequently make assumptions about her politics regardless, something she says she's grown used to tuning out. The piece also referenced her social media activity from earlier in the year, including casual posts from a golf outing, a NASCAR appearance, and photos with family.
The full article, because now that I'm reading this, it's another paragraph. And we have to dive into this other paragraph because Sophie Cunningham has broken the damn internet. Let me see if I can get to the actual article right now, guys. On the entire article, ESPN did an exclusive story on Sophie Cunningham. Love her or hate her, Sophie Cunningham won't be ignored. This is the article right here.
Meanwhile, Caitlin Clark's viewership numbers continue climbing. Her recent matchup against the New York Liberty drew 2.5 million average viewers, peaking near 3 million, making it the second most watched view NBA broadcast since the year 2000, trailing only a Fever vs. Aces matchup that averaged 2.64 million viewers. Clark remains the common thread behind nearly every top-rated broadcast since entering the league, regardless of surrounding controversy, and the network is reportedly planning around 50 nationally televised games for her team next season.
Love her or hate her, Sophie Cunningham won't be ignored. This is the article right here that they did on Sophie Cunningham. This article came out today. As you guys can see here, there's pictures here with Sophie Cunningham. And I believe this is where the viewership number came from, 3.2 million, more than Caitlin Clark. I told y'all, Sophie Cunningham is going to be bigger than Caitlin because of what she stands for. That's just how I feel. Shout out to Sophie. She's from my home state here in Missouri. Now, Sophie Cunningham played basketball in her day. She played for Mizzou.
Still, the more notable trend this month has been the intensifying criticism directed at Cunningham, arriving during a month tied to national celebration, despite her frequent public displays of patriotism and pride in her home state of Missouri. Supporters point out that she built her role in the league as a bench player through hard work rather than imitation of other personalities, and argue that criticism aimed at someone for trying to advance their career says more about the critics than about her.
From my home state here in Missouri. Now, Sophie Cunningham played basketball in her day. She played for Mizzou. And is she a hero? Long before Sophie Cunningham was Caitlin Clark teammates, Whisper Clark's enforcer, or had even heard the name Caitlin Clark, all questions was asked. And depending on the day, discourse answered in regards to Sophie Cunningham. Now, down here is where we want to get to before we get into more of this article here, because this talks about the MAGA part. Because we know that they like to call her.
The main topic under discussion is a statement from the WNBPA declining to let partner brands profit from Sophie Cunningham's viral pointing gesture, with the union claiming it does not promote or monetize confrontational behavior between its members. That justification doesn't hold up well against the league's own history. There have been past promotional spots run by the league itself that lean directly into moments of players clashing with one another, showing confrontations play out on screen as part of the marketing. So this idea that the league avoids highlighting friction between players isn't accurate based on precedent.
Because we know that they like to call her the MAGA Barbie. Now, here it is. Now, the article goes on to say, but she also insists that none of this is some Rosetta Stone to unlocking the true nature of her political worldview. I'm very much in the middle. I agree with things on both sides, disagree with things on both sides, and that's all I've ever said and my political beliefs. But people love to assume. People are assuming louder now, so loud that for Cunningham.
Beyond that, partner brands have been given plenty of leeway elsewhere. Look at NBA 2K26, boot up the game, score with Angel Reese, call a timeout, and her in-game celebration is the exact same taunting gesture. 2K is a licensed partner of the Players Association, and that animation made it into promotional trailers without objection, so a partner brand was allowed to use that gesture freely, yet a similar situation involving Cunningham gets blocked. That's an inconsistency worth pointing out.
And players getting into it. So, no, this is not an uncommon thing that the WNBA have done. Not only that, like, they have allowed partners to do a whole bunch of things. And let's not forget this. You guys can see it in the thumbnail. If you boot up NBA 2K26, if you boot up the game, there is Angel Reese doing this. If you score a basket with Angel Reese and a timeout is called, you got Angel.
There would be less of a problem here if the rule were applied evenly. Instead, it appears to only get enforced when the taunt targets one specific player, while gestures aimed at others get overlooked entirely. Some have argued that blocking merchandising over Cunningham's gesture is really just an attempt to limit how much she can profit from this moment. In practice, though, this restriction likely works in her favor. Since partner brands can't license the material, fans and buyers are going directly to Cunningham herself for anything related to it, meaning she personally captures more of the value than she would if the league had simply approved a licensed product. The irony of the union's decision is that it may end up boosting her earnings rather than limiting them.
Angel Reese doing this. 2K is a partner with the WNBPA. They have no issue with, I'm not entirely sure, But have they may or may not have monetized buying that celebration. They have absolutely, in their trailer, they had Angel Reese doing this. That is a partner. They have no issue with a partner doing that. It is selective. It is absolutely.
The bigger issue is the double standard, not the existence of a rule. Defenders of the decision point out that Reese's version of the gesture originated during her college days, arguing that context makes it different. But the wording of the policy refers.
I have no issue with a partner doing that. It is selective. It is absolutely selective here. And I have actually got no issue if the WNBA actually enforced this. But you can't quote a blanket rule saying, we don't do this. And then there are plenty of examples when the taunt is towards the expense of one player that we've got no issue. We've got no issue when the taunt is at the expense of one player. We have an issue when the taunt is something else. Someone says they don't want Sophie making money because...
Regardless of who does it, the gesture appearing in a video game shouldn't be treated as a serious issue on its own. The real problem is the selective application. A blanket rule gets invoked in one case, while similar or even more pointed behavior directed at another player draws no penalty at all.
Issue when the taunt is something else. Someone says they don't want Sophie making money because of who she is. Sophie can make as much money as she wants out of this. All the WNBA has done is made sure that Sophie Cunningham is going to make way more money out of this, because while the partners of the WNBA can't do anything, people are going to go directly to Sophie Cunningham. She is going to make way more money out of this, which is hilarious. My issue...
As for what actually happened on the court, Cunningham pointed at Dewana Bonner. Bonner reacted heatedly toward Cunningham, and Cunningham kept pointing without saying anything further. Framing that exchange as some form of targeted insult doesn't match what took place. This was closer to playful antagonizing after noticing Bonner's frustration, not an attack. Separately, there's been commentary mocking people online who criticized Cunningham's children for laughing along during the moment, calling that reaction overblown given that it's simply become a viral internet joke at this point.
Way more money out of this, which is hilarious. My issue is just the complete hypocrisy. They say they don't generally feature. They're saying, oh, this is the blanket rule. They have zero issue. And people are like, oh, but like Angel Reese doing that was when she was in college, so it doesn't count. It says here confrontation between members. It doesn't say between members while they were on the floor as members of the WNBA. And let's not forget, Dejanay Carrington has ran up to Caitlin Clark doing that multiple times in the pros. Multiple players have done that.
The likely reasoning behind the block seems tied to who stands to profit. A trading card company reportedly wanted to produce a card featuring the pointing moment, and the union turned the request down. It also wouldn't be surprising if a video game developer had wanted to add a similar animation or celebration for Cunningham in a future title, modeled after how Reese's gesture was implemented, only to be denied as well.
Doing that multiple times in the pros. Multiple players have done that to Caitlin Clark since she has set foot in the WNBA. Let's be very clear. Someone said Caitlin taunts others by waving her hand in her face. She's done it in the WNBA. Caitlin Clark has done this once towards her own coach. Towards her own coach while walking in for a timeout, walking away from the other team. It wasn't even a taunt, it was a celebration. It was a celebration. The complete, was not even a taunt. Either way,
The core criticism here isn't that the union has the right to set restrictions. It clearly does. But that enforcement differs depending on which player is involved, favoring some teams' players over others. One relevant detail: licensing revenue tied to a specific player's likeness or moment typically gets shared equally across the entire league roster under standard agreements. That means if merchandise had been approved featuring the pointing gesture, all players, including Bonner, would have received an equal cut of those proceeds.
It doesn't matter. I don't give a shit that when you boot up NBA 2K, you see this. I don't care. I don't think anyone should necessarily care about that. The problem is that they have no issue when at anything, they will say, you know what, we have this blanket rule, you can't do this. But when something is at the expense of a Caitlin Clark, of another player. They have no issue with it. That is the problem. Apparently, it was a derogatory point.
By blocking the licensing, that shared revenue pool doesn't materialize, but any money Cunningham earns independently and directly, without league-approved merchandise, stays with her alone. So paradoxically, the block reduces total league-wide earnings while increasing what flows specifically to Cunningham. Given her savvy with branding and social media, it's expected she'll pursue independent licensing deals herself, since she has a reputation for understanding how to capitalize on viral attention effectively.
It was a derogatory point. So, Sophie Cunningham points at Duana Bonner. Duana Bonner points at Sophie. Sophie Cunningham screaming insults to Sophie Cunningham. Sophie Cunningham continues to point at Duana Bonner and doesn't say anything. Apparently now that was derogatory towards Duana Bonner. No, it wasn't. Sophie Cunningham was just shit stirring. She saw that Duana Bonner was getting angry and she continued to point. It was no derogatory bullshit in this. Like, you've then got obviously Sophie Cunningham's kids at camp.
Finally, there's frustration expressed at the inconsistency in what the league and its player association consider harassment. Pointing at a player during a heated in-game exchange gets treated as worthy of restriction, while other instances, such as a player running around the court, gesturing toward Clark specifically, or dedicating a moment to her during a ceremony, haven't drawn the same scrutiny. The conclusion drawn is that the union's decision-making looks inconsistent and undermines its own credibility on this issue.